In the small town of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where Amish buggies share the road with modern cars, Sarah Mitchell, a 34-year-old single mother, faces the darkest hour of her life. After losing her job at the textile factory and with eviction notices piling up, she finds herself doing the unthinkable, stealing eggs from an Amish roadside stand to feed her 8-year-old daughter, Emma. When caught red-handed by Jacob Yoder, a widowed Amish farmer known for his stern demeanor but hidden kindness, Sarah expects judgment and punishment. Instead, Jacob's unexpected question, "You want work, or you want my name?" sets in motion a journey that will challenge both their worlds, test the boundaries of faith and tradition, and ultimately reveal that sometimes the greatest miracles come from the most unlikely connections. The October wind cut through Sarah Mitchell's thin jacket like 1,000 tiny knives as she stood outside the sunny side-up roadside stand, her trembling fingers clutching a worn canvas bag. The hand-painted sign reading "Fresh Eggs, Honor System, $3 dozens," seemed to mock her poverty, each letter a reminder of everything she couldn't afford. "Just this once," she whispered to herself, glancing nervously at the empty country road. "Emma needs protein, just this once." The morning mist clung to the Pennsylvania farmland like a guilty conscience, and somewhere in the distance, the clip-clop of horse hooves echoed against the asphalt. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as she reached for the wooden box containing neat rows of brown eggs, still warm from the henhouse. She had never stolen anything in her life, not when her husband David died in the construction accident 3 years ago, leaving her with mounting medical bills, not when the factory closed down last month, taking with it her only source of income, not even when the food stamps ran out last week, and Emma had gone to bed with only crackers for dinner. But this morning, when Emma had looked up at her with those trusting blue eyes and said, "Mommy, my tummy hurts from being empty," something inside Sarah had finally snapped. The eggs felt heavier than they should, as she carefully placed a dozen in her bag. Her hands shook so violently that one slipped from her reps, shattering on the ground with a sickening crack. The yellow yolk spread across the dirt like an accusation. "I'm sorry," she whispered to no one, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry." She turned to leave, her feet already in motion, when a deep voice froze her in place. Running from something, or running to something, Sarah spun around, her bag clutched protectively against her chest. A tall Amish man stood beside a black buggy she hadn't heard approach. His beard was touched with grey, and his dark eyes held a mixture of sternness and something else she couldn't quite identify. He wore the traditional black hat and suspenders, his weathered hands resting calmly at his sides. I was just." The lie died on her lips as she met his steady gaze. "The eggs," he said simply, nodding toward her bag. "You were taking them without paying." Sarah's knees nearly buckled. This was it. He would call the police. She would be arrested. Emma would be taken away. Everything she had fought so hard to hold together would finally fall apart. "Please," she gasped, the words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "Please don't call the police. I have a daughter. She's 8. She's hungry. I lost my job. I've never done this before. I swear. I'll put them back. I'll leave. I'll never come here again. Please, just." The man held up a hand, and Sarah's frantic words ceased. He studied her for a long moment, taking in her gaunt cheeks, her patched jacket, the desperation etched into every line of her face. "What is your name?" he asked. Sarah Mitchell. "I am Jacob Yoder. These are my chickens, my eggs." He paused, his expression unreadable. "Tell me, Sarah Mitchell, you want work? Or you want my name?" Sarah blinked, certain she had misheard. What? "Work," Jacob repeated patiently. "I offer you honest work for honest pay. Or," he gestured to the eggs in her bag, "you can keep stealing, and I give my name to the police report. The choice is yours." The words hung in the air between them, like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. Sarah's pride warred with her desperation. She had a college degree, had worked in management before the factory downsized. The thought of working on an Amish farm, of lowering herself to manual labor, then she thought of Emma's hungry eyes. "Work," she whispered, then stronger. "I want work." Jacob nodded once as if he had expected no other answer. "Be here tomorrow morning, 5 o'clock. Bring your daughter. She can help gather eggs while you work. Pay is $60 a day, plus breakfast and lunch for both of you." Sarah's eyes wide. $60 a day was less than minimum wage, but the meals would mean everything. "Why?" she asked, unable to stop herself. "Why would you help me? I was stealing from you." For the first time, something that might have been a smile tugged at the corner of Jacob's mouth. "Because," he said, climbing back onto his buggy, "everyone deserves a second chance. Even English women who steal eggs." As the buggy rolled away, Sarah stood frozen in place, the bag of eggs still clutched to her chest. For the first time in months, she felt something she had almost forgotten existed: hope. That evening, Sarah sat at their small kitchen table, watching Emma devour scrambled eggs with an enthusiasm that made her chest tight with equal parts love and shame. The apartment was cold. The heat had been shut off 2 weeks ago, but Emma didn't complain, too focused on her first real meal in days. "Mummy, these are the best eggs ever," Emma declared, her face glowing with simple joy. Sarah managed to smile. "I'm glad, sweetheart. And guess what? Mummy got a job today. Starting tomorrow, we're going to work on a real farm." Emma's eyes lit up. "A farm? With animals?" "With chickens," Sarah confirmed. "Lots of chickens. And the farmer said you can help collect eggs while I work." "Really?" Emma bounced in her seat. "Oh, Mummy, that's the best news ever. Will there be horses too? And cows?" "I don't know, baby. We'll see tomorrow." As Sarah tucked Emma into bed that night, her daughter asked, "Mummy, are things going to be okay now?" Sarah smoothed back Emma's dark hair. "So like her father's?" "I hope so, sweetheart. I really hope so." But as she lay in her own bed, staring at the water stains on the ceiling, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that stepping into Jacob Yoder's world would change their lives in ways she couldn't begin to imagine. The Amish lived by rules she didn't understand, in a world that seemed frozen in time. How could she, a modern woman who had once managed a team of 30 people, suddenly become a farmhand? The answer was simple: she couldn't afford not to. As sleep finally claimed her, Sarah's last thought was of Jacob Yoder's eyes, stern but not unkind, holding secrets and sorrows she sensed ran as deep as her own. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new humiliations perhaps, but it would also bring $60 and 2 meals. For now, that would have to be enough. The alarm on Sarah's phone buzzed at 4:15 a.m., but she was already awake, had been for the past hour. Anxiety gnawed at her stomach as she dressed in her most worn jeans and a faded sweatshirt, the closest thing she had to farm clothes. In the next room she could hear Emma's gentle breathing. "Emma, sweetheart," she whispered, gently shaking her daughter's shoulder. "Time to wake up." Emma's eyes fluttered open, confusion giving way to excitement as she remembered. Farm day. Despite everything, Sarah smiled at her daughter's enthusiasm. They dressed quickly in the cold apartment, Sarah layering Emma in every warm piece of clothing she owned. The walk to the Yoder farm would take 40 minutes. The car had been repossessed 2 months ago. They stepped out into the pre-dawn darkness, with breath forming clouds in the crisp October air. Emma's small hand fit perfectly in Sarah's as they walked along the shoulder of the country road, guided by the faint glow of Sarah's phone flashlight. "Mummy, look," Emma pointed to the sky. "So many stars." Sarah glanced up, struck by the brilliance of the constellation-filled sky, unmarred by city lights. When was the last time she had really looked at the stars? "They're beautiful, aren't they?" she murmured. "Daddy used to show me the Big Dipper," Emma said quietly. "Do you think he can see the stars where he is?" Sarah's throat tightened. "I'm sure he can, baby, and I bet he's watching over us right now." They walked in comfortable silence after that, the only sounds their footsteps on gravel and the distant hoot of an owl. As they crested a small hill, the Yoder farm spread before them in the pale pre-dawn light. White buildings clustered together like a small village, the main house, several barns, what looked like a workshop, and various outbuildings Sarah couldn't identify. Lamplight glowed warmly in the windows of the main house, and smoke already curled from the chimney. The sight was so pastoral, so removed from the strip malls and factories. Sarah knew that she felt like she had stepped back in time. A figure emerged from the largest barn, Jacob, carrying 2 metal buckets. He stopped when he saw them approaching, setting down the buckets. "You came," he said simply. "I said I would," Sarah replied, lifting her chin slightly. Jacob's eyes moved to Emma, who was partially hiding behind her mother's leg. His stern expression softened slightly. "And this must be the hungry little one." Emma peeked out, her natural curiosity overcoming her shyness. "Are those for the chickens?" she asked, pointing to the buckets. "Jay, for feeding and watering. Would you like to help?" Emma looked up at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. "Yes, please," Emma said, stepping forward. But first, breakfast. Come." He led them toward the main house, and Sarah felt her anxiety spike. Would they be eating with his family? What was appropriate behavior? She knew so little about Amish customs. The kitchen door opened before they reached it, and a woman appeared, sturdy and middle-aged, with kind eyes beneath her white prayer covering. "This is Ruth," Jacob said. "My sister. She keeps house for me since—" He paused, something flickering across his face. "Since my Mary passed." "Welcome," Ruth said warmly, though her eyes held curiosity as they swept over Sarah's modern clothes and Emma's collection of mismatched layers. Come in. You must be cold from your walk." The kitchen was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. No electric appliances, no modern conveniences, yet it radiated warmth and efficiency. A wood-burning stove dominated one wall, and a long wooden table was already set with simple white dishes. "Sit," Ruth instructed, bustling to the stove. "The others will be down soon." "Others?" Sarah asked nervously. "My children," Jacob explained. "4 of them. The oldest, Samuel, is 16. The youngest, Katie, is 6. Emma perked up at the mention of a child close to her age. 6? "I'm 8. Then you can be a gut helper for Katie," Ruth said, placing plates of scrambled eggs, thick bacon, and fresh bread before them. "She is shy with English children." Sarah's mouth watered at the sight and smell of the food, but she waited, unsure of the protocol. Jacob bowed his head, and Sarah quickly followed suit, nudging Emma to do the same. "We thank thee, Lord, for this food, and for the hands that prepared it," Jacob said quietly. "We ask your blessing on this day's work, and on those who share our table." "Amen," Sarah echoed, while Emma dug into her eggs with enthusiasm that made Ruth smile. The kitchen door opened, and 4 children filed in, 3 boys of varying ages, and a little girl who must be Katie. They stopped short at the sight of strangers at their table. "Children," Jacob said calmly, "this is Sarah and Emma. They will be helping with the farm work." The oldest boy, Samuel, Sarah remembered, frowned slightly, but said nothing. The younger boys stared with open curiosity, while Katie sidled closer to her father. "Why are they dressed so strange?" one of the middle boys asked. "Amos," Ruth scolded. "Mind your manners." "It's all right," Sarah said quickly. "We must look pretty different to you." "You look like the English people in town," the boy continued, undeterred, but sadder. "Amos." Ruth's voice was sharper this time, but Sarah found herself almost laughing at the child's brutal honesty. "You're right," she admitted. "I have been sad, but your father is helping us, so maybe I won't be so sad anymore." This seemed to satisfy Amos, who turned his attention to his breakfast. The meal continued with stilted conversation, the children stealing glances at Sarah and Emma, while pretending not to. After breakfast, Jacob stood. "Samuel, you will help me with the milking." Ruth, can Katie show Emma the chicken coops? She knows where all the hens like to hide their eggs. Katie looked uncertain, but Emma smiled at her encouragingly. I've never collected eggs before. Will you teach me? The little Amish girl studied Emma for a long moment, then nodded solemnly. Yeah, I will teach you, but you must be quiet. The hens don't like loud English children. I can be quiet, Emma promised seriously. Jacob turned to Sarah. You come with me. We start in the dairy barn. Sarah followed him out into the crisp morning air, her nervousness returning. The dairy barn was warm and smelled of hay and animals, not unpleasant, just overwhelmingly foreign to someone who had spent her life in suburbs and cities. A dozen cows stood in stalls, their large eyes watching the newcomers with mild interest. Samuel was already at work, moving with practiced efficiency. Have you ever milked a cow? Jacob asked. Sarah shook her head. I haven't even touched a cow. Something that might have been amusement flickered in Jacob's eyes. Then we start with mucking stalls. Here, he handed her a pitchfork. The soiled hay goes in the wheelbarrow. Fresh hay is in the loft. Each cow gets fresh bedding daily. Sarah looked at the pitchfork in her hands, then at the stalls full of manure and soiled hay. 6 months ago, she had been reviewing spreadsheets in an air-conditioned office. Now, she squared her shoulders and got to work. The labor was harder than anything she had ever done. Within an hour, her back screamed in protest. Her hands developed blisters despite the work gloves Jacob had provided, and she was covered in sweat despite the cool morning. But she didn't complain. She couldn't. Every time she wanted to give up, she thought of Emma's joy at breakfast, of the $60 that would buy groceries, of the fact that tonight they would both go to bed with full stomachs. Jacob worked alongside her, saying little but watching everything. When she struggled with the wheelbarrow, he showed her a better technique. When she couldn't reach the hay in the loft, he demonstrated the proper way to use the ladder. You have not done physical work before, he observed during a water break. Sarah bristled slightly. I've worked, just differently. What kind of work? I was a production manager at a textile factory. Before that, customer service. Before that, she paused. Before that, I was a wife and mother. And now? Sarah met his steady gaze. Now I'm just trying to survive. Jacob nodded slowly. Survival is gut, but living is better. Before Sarah could ask what he meant, a commotion from outside caught their attention. Emma's laughter rang out, mixed with Katie's giggles. They stepped out to see the two girls chasing a rouge chicken around the yard, both covered in feathers and dirt, but grinning from ear to ear. Katie, Ruth called from the kitchen door. What did I tell you about letting Henrietta out? She escaped. Katie protested. Emma tried to catch her, but she's a tricky hen. Sarah watched her daughter, really watched her. When was the last time she had heard Emma laugh like that? Really laugh, not the polite giggle she gave when Sarah tried to cheer her up, but full-bellied, joyful laughter. Your daughter, Jacob said quietly beside her. She has not had much joy recently. No, Sarah admitted. She hasn't. Children need joy like plants need sunlight. Without it, they wither. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. I've tried so hard to. I do not judge. Jacob interrupted gently. I observe. My Katie has not laughed like that since her mother died 2 years ago. Sarah looked at him in surprise. This was the most personal thing he had shared. I'm sorry for your loss. Jacob's jaw tightened. The Lord gives and takes according to his will. But the taking is hard. They stood in silence, watching their daughters finally corner the wayward Henrietta. Emma held the hen carefully, while Katie showed her the proper way to carry a chicken. The sight was surreal, her modern child and this Amish girl, finding friendship despite the centuries that seemed to separate their worlds. Back to work, Jacob said abruptly, turning away. There is much to do. The day continued in a blur of physical labor. Sarah fed chickens, collected eggs, legally this time, helped prepare lunch, weeded a massive vegetable garden, and learned to operate a hand-cranked butter churn. By the time the sun began to sink toward the horizon, every muscle in her body ached. Emma, meanwhile, had become Katie's shadow. The two girls were inseparable, chattering away as they did their chores. Sarah overheard them at one point. "Why don't you have electricity?" Emma asked. "We don't need it," Katie replied simply. "We have everything we need without it." "But what about TV or tablets?" "What's a tablet?" "It's like a computer, but smaller. You can play games and watch videos." Katie looked puzzled. "Why would I want to watch videos when I can play with real chickens and real friends?" Emma considered this. "That's actually a good point." As the day wound down, Jacob found Sarah sitting on a hay bale, trying to summon the energy for the long walk home. "You did gut work today," he said, handing her an envelope. Sarah opened it to find $60 in cash. Such a small amount, yet it felt like a fortune. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything. For not calling the police. For giving me work. For tomorrow," Jacob interrupted. "Same time, if you want." "Yes," Sarah said immediately. "Yes, I want." Jacob studied her for a moment. "It is a long walk from town, not gut for a child in the dark and cold." Sarah's shoulders slumped. She had been trying not to think about the walk home, or how they would manage it as winter approached. "There is a small house," Jacob continued slowly, as if the words were being pulled from him, "on the edge of my property. It has been empty since my cousin moved to Ohio. No electricity, but it has a good wood stove and working plumbing." Sarah's heart stopped. Are you offering $150 a month rent, taken from your wages? You would be closer for work. Emma would be closer to Katie." He paused. "If you want." Sarah stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. A house. He was offering them a house. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you being so kind to us?" Jacob was quiet for so long, Sarah thought. He wouldn't answer. Then, "When my Mary was sick, before she passed, an English woman helped us. She was a nurse at the hospital. She went beyond her duties, stayed past her shifts, helped us navigate the English medical world. She showed us kindness when we were strangers in a strange land." He met Sarah's eyes. "I cannot repay that debt to her, but perhaps I can pay it forward." Sarah felt tears rolling down her cheeks. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes, Mommy." Emma piped up, appearing with Katie. "Then Katie and I can play every day." Sarah looked at her daughter's hopeful face, at Katie's shy smile, at Jacob's patient expression. It would mean leaving everything familiar, stepping fully into a world she didn't understand. It would mean admitting that her old life was truly over. But it would also mean safety, warmth, food, hope. "Yes," she said. "Yes, thank you. Yes." Ruth appeared as if summoned. "Gut. Then you stay for supper, and the men can help you move your things tomorrow. Katie, help me set extra places." As the girls ran off together, Sarah found herself alone with Jacob again. "I won't let you down," she said fiercely. "I'll work hard. I'll earn this." "I know," Jacob said simply. "I saw it in your eyes this morning. You are a fighter, Sarah Mitchell. That is gut. Life requires fighters." As they walked toward the house for supper, Sarah felt something shift inside her chest. This morning she had been a thief, desperate and alone. Tonight, she was, what? Not Amish, certainly, but not quite English anymore either. She was something in between, balanced on the edge of two worlds, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, that felt like exactly where she needed to be. The next morning arrived with a flurry of activity. Sarah had barely slept, her mind racing with the reality of what she'd agreed to. She and Emma had spent the night packing their meager belongings into garbage bags and the few boxes they'd saved from better times. A knock at the apartment door at precisely 7 a.m. made her jump. She opened it to find Samuel and two other young Amish men she didn't recognize. "Father sent us," Samuel said stiffly, "to help you move." "Oh, thank you. I didn't expect. We brought the wagon," one of the others interrupted, gesturing to the window. Sarah peered out to see an actual horse-drawn wagon parked on the street, already attracting curious stares from her neighbors. Mrs. Chen from 2B was openly gawking from her doorway. "Everything going okay, Sarah?" Mrs. Chen called out, her voice laden with suspicion. "Yes, fine. We're just moving," Sarah replied, heat rising to her cheeks. "With the Amish." Mrs. Chen's eyebrows nearly reached her hairline. Emma appeared, dragging a garbage bag of clothes. "Hi, Samuel. Did you bring Katie?" Samuel's stern expression softened slightly. "She is helping Aunt Ruth prepare your house." As the young men efficiently loaded their possessions, it took depressingly little time. Sarah felt the weight of her neighbor's stares. She could imagine the gossip already spreading through the building. "Sarah Mitchell, so desperate she's gone to live with the Amish. Is this all?" Samuel asked, surveying the small pile in the wagon. "Yes," Sarah said quietly. "This is everything." The ride to the farm was surreal. Emma sat up front with Samuel, peppering him with questions about the horses, while Sarah huddled in the back with their belongings. Every car that passed slowed down to stare. She felt like she was in some strange parade, advertising her failure to the entire county. But as they turned down the long drive to the Yoder farm, Sarah's anxiety began to shift into something else. Anticipation? Hope? She wasn't sure. Jacob met them at a small white house set back from the main buildings, close enough to feel part of the farm, but far enough to offer privacy. It was simple but charming, with a front porch and green shutters that needed paint. "It has been empty 6 months, he said, producing an old-fashioned key. "But Ruth and Katie cleaned yesterday, and the boys checked the wood stove and plumbing." The door opened to reveal a sparse but clean interior. A main room served as living area and kitchen, with a wood stove in the corner and simple wooden furniture. 2 small bedrooms and a basic bathroom completed the space. No electrical outlets, of course, but oil lamps sat on several surfaces. "It's perfect," Emma breathed, running from room to room. "Mommy, I have my own room. And look, there's a tree outside my window." Sarah touched the solid wooden table, the clean if worn countertops, the rocking chair by the window. After their cramped apartment with its peeling paint and persistent mold, this felt like a palace. "The pump outside is for well water," Jacob explained. "The propane tank feeds the stove and hot water heater. Wood for the stove is in the shed. There are preserves and canned goods in the cellar. Ruth's doing. She said you would need time to settle before shopping." Sarah turned away, overwhelmed. Ruth, who didn't even know them, had stocked their pantry. "I'll deduct the first month's rent from your wages over time," Jacob continued. "No need to pay all at once." "Thank you," Sarah managed. I can't." "Then don't," Jacob said simply. "Just live, work. Let your daughter be a child. That is thanks enough." A whirlwind of blonde hair and energy burst through the door. Katie carrying a basket. "Emma, come, I brought you eggs from my special hens, and Aunt Ruth sent bread. And I put flowers in your room because you said you liked purple." "And Katie," Jacob said gently, "breathe." Katie stopped, blushing. "Sorry, Dat. I'm just happy Emma is living close now." Emma grabbed Katie's hand. "Show me everything." The girls disappeared into Emma's room, their chatter floating back to the adults. Samuel and the other young men finished unloading the wagon, declining Sarah's offers to help. "We will leave you to settle," Jacob said. "Tomorrow is Sunday, our day of rest. But Monday, work continues. 5:30 now that you are closer." After they left, Sarah stood in the middle of her new home. No, their new home, and felt the strangest urge to laugh, or cry, or both. "Mommy?" Emma appeared in the doorway. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, baby, I'm okay. Just adjusting. I love it here," Emma said firmly. "It feels safe." Safe? When was the last time either of them had felt truly safe? That evening, as Sarah figured out the oil lamps and the wood stove with Emma's enthusiastic but unhelpful assistance, she found herself thinking about the turn her life had taken. 3 days ago, she'd been stealing eggs. Now she was living in an Amish house. Her daughter's new best friend wore a bonnet, and her boss was a widowed farmer who spoke in proverbs. The wood stove proved trickier than expected. After her third failed attempt to get it lit, a knock came at the door. Ruth stood there with a covered dish and a knowing smile. "Jacob said you might need help with the stove. English people always struggle at first." She swept in, showing Sarah the proper way to arrange the kindling, how to adjust the damper, how to bank the coals to last through the night. The covered dish turned out to be a hearty casserole that filled the little house with the scent of home cooking. "You don't have to keep feeding us," Sarah protested. Ruth waved her off. "Nonsense. You are neighbors now. This is what neighbors do." As Ruth prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "Tomorrow is Sunday. We have church, but in the afternoon perhaps Emma would like to come play while you rest." "The adjustment is hard, I know." "That's very kind, but Sarah," Ruth interrupted gently, "you are not Charity. You are a mother doing what she must for her child. I respect that. Let us help." After Ruth left, Sarah and Emma ate their supper by lamplight. The casserole was delicious, filled with vegetables and meat in a rich gravy. Emma chattered about Katie and the chickens and how Samuel had let her help drive the horses for a few minutes. "He's not as grumpy as he looks," Emma informed her. "He said his dad used to be much grumpier before we came." "Oh?" Sarah tried to sound casual. "Did he say why?" "He said his dad has been sad since his mum went to heaven, but now he seems less sad." Emma considered this. "I think it's because he's helping us. Helping people makes you feel better when you're sad. That's what Daddy used to say." Sarah reached across the table to squeeze Emma's hand, her throat tight. Daddy was right about that. That night, Sarah lay in an actual bed, not a mattress on the floor, but a real bed with a simple wooden frame, and listened to the night sounds of the farm. Crickets instead of sirens, wind through trees instead of neighbors arguing, an owl hooting instead of car alarms. The silence should have been unsettling, but instead, she found herself relaxing for the first time in months. No landlord pounding on the door, no eviction notices, no choosing between electricity and food, just peace. Monday arrived with new challenges. Sarah's body protested violently as she forced herself out of bed at 5 a.m. Every muscle ached from Saturday's work, and the blisters on her hands had turned into painful welts. "Rough night?" Jacob asked when she arrived at the dairy barn, noting her stiff movements. "I'm fine," Sarah said through gritted teeth. Jacob disappeared into a side room and returned with a tin of salve. "For your hands. Ruth makes it. We'll help with the blisters." Sarah wanted to refuse, to prove she didn't need help, but the gentle concern in his eyes stopped her. She accepted the tin with murmured thanks. The salve smelled of herbs and immediately soothed her raw palms. As she worked alongside Jacob, she found herself stealing glances at him. He moved with such easy efficiency, every motion purposeful. His hands were scarred and calloused, but gentle with the animals. "You are staring," he said without looking up from the cow he was milking. Sarah flushed. "Sorry, I was just, you're so comfortable here. This is your whole world. You're born in that house, raised on this land, married," he paused. "Married in the barn we use for church. This is all I know. Don't you ever wonder what's out there, in the English world?" Jacob was quiet for a moment. "During Rumspringa I wondered. Even tried some English ways, but the pull of home was stronger. Rumspringa, our running around time. When we are teenagers, we can experience the outside world before choosing baptism, and you chose this." "I chose this," he confirmed. Mary helped with that choice. She was so certain of her path, it made me certain of mine. The mention of his wife created a moment of awkwardness. Sarah focused on spreading fresh hay, unsure how to respond. "She would have liked you," Jacob said suddenly. Sarah looked up in surprise. "Really?" She had a soft spot for fighters. Said the world needed more women who refused to give up. A sad smile crossed his face. She was a fighter too. Until the end. What happened? If you don't mind my asking, cancer, Jacob said simply. Started in her breast, spread everywhere. The English doctors tried, but God had other plans. I'm so sorry. Your husband? Emma mentioned he went to heaven. Sarah's hands stilled on the pitchfork. Construction accident. A beam fell. He didn't suffer. That's what they told me. Anyway. How long? 3 years. Emma was 5. She remembers him, but sometimes I worry the memories are fading. You keep him alive for her? I try. We talk about him. Look at pictures, but it's hard when everything is a struggle. When you're just trying to survive, there's not much energy left for remembering. Jacob moved to the next cow, his movements methodical. That is why I kept working after Mary died. The routine, the purpose, it helped. Standing still lets the grief catch up. They worked in companionable silence after that, each lost in their own memories. Sarah found the physical labor almost meditative. There was something to be said for work that produced immediate, visible results. Dirty stall to clean stall, empty bucket to full bucket, hungry animals to fed animals. By lunch she was exhausted, but satisfied. Ruth had prepared a feast. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, fresh bread, and 2 kinds of pie. The family gathered around the long table, heads bowed in prayer. Sarah watched the interaction between family members with fascination. No phones, no distractions, just conversation and connection. The younger boys teased each other, but stopped immediately when Jacob gave them a look. Katie and Emma sat together, whispering and giggling. Samuel remained quiet, but Sarah caught him smiling at something Emma said. "How are you finding the house?" Beth asked. "It's wonderful, really. I can't thank you enough for the food and supplies." It was nothing, though you will need to learn to preserve food if you stay through winter. Store-bought gets expensive. "I'd like to learn," Sarah said, surprising herself. "I mean, if you're willing to teach me." Ruth beamed. "Of course, we start with applesauce next week. The orchards are ready for picking." The afternoon brought new challenges. Jacob set her to repairing a section of fence, showing her how to stretch wire and secure posts. It was precise work that required focus, and Sarah found her mind calming as she fell into the rhythm. "You learn quickly," Jacob observed, checking her work. "I've always been good with my hands, just differently. Typing, filing, paper pushing. All work has value if done well. Even stealing eggs." The words slipped out before Sarah could stop them. Jacob's expression didn't change. That was not work. That was desperation. "There is a difference. I'm still ashamed. Gut shame teaches us. But do not let it define you. You are more than your worst moment." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "How can you be so forgiving? I stole from you, and now you work for me. You care for your daughter. You humble yourself to learn new ways." He met her eyes. "I see who you are becoming, not who you were." That evening, as Sarah and Emma prepared their simple supper in their little house, Emma asked, "Mommy, are we Amish now?" Sarah laughed. "No, baby. We're still English. We're just Amish adjacent." "What does that mean?" "It means we're learning from them, living simply like them. But we're still us." "I like it," Emma decided. "Katie's teaching me to sew, and Samuel said he might teach me to drive the buggy when I'm older. And Ruth is showing me how to gather eggs without scaring the hens. You're learning a lot. Are you happy, Mommy?" Sarah considered the question. Her body ached. Her hands were blistered. She had no idea what the future held. But Emma was fed. They had a roof over their heads. And for the first time in so long, they had hope. "Yes," she said honestly. "I'm happy." That night, as she wrote in an old notebook by lamplight, documenting their days for Emma to read when she was older, Sarah reflected on the strange turn their lives had taken. She'd lost so much, fallen so far, but maybe, just maybe, she'd landed exactly where they needed to be. Outside, an owl hooted. The wind rustled through the trees, and in her little bed, Emma slept peacefully, no longer crying from hunger. It wasn't the life Sarah had planned, but increasingly, she wondered if it might be the life they needed. 2 weeks passed in a blur of early mornings and aching muscles. Sarah's hands grew calluses over the blisters, her body slowly adapting to the physical demand. She learned the rhythm of farm life, milking at dawn, mucking stalls, feeding chickens, mending fences, tending the massive vegetable garden. But Thursday morning brought an unexpected challenge. Sarah arrived at the dairy barn to find it empty except for Samuel, who looked uncomfortable. "Where's your father?" she asked. "He had to go to town. English business." Samuel shifted his weight. He said, "You're to work with me today." Sarah sensed the boy's reluctance. In 2 weeks, Samuel had barely spoken to her beyond basic pleasantries. She knew he disapproved of his father hiring an English woman, could see it in the way his jaw tightened whenever she made a mistake. "All right," she said carefully. "What needs doing?" "Everything," Samuel said curtly. "Can you handle it?" Sarah bristled at his tone, but kept her voice level. "I'll do my best." The morning was tense. Samuel barked orders, criticized her technique, and made his disdain clear. When Sarah struggled to lift a particularly heavy milk can, he shook his head. "English women," he muttered, "too soft for real work." Something snapped inside Sarah. She set down the can with a thud. "You know what? You're right. I am soft. I've never worked a farm, never milked a cow until 2 weeks ago, never mucked a stall or mended a fence or done any of this." She stepped closer to him. "But you know what else I've never done? Never buried a husband at 31. Never had to explain to a 5-year-old why daddy wasn't coming home. Never chose between paying rent or buying food for my child." Samuel's eyes widened, but Sarah wasn't finished. "I've been soft, yes, but I'm here at 5:30 every morning, breaking my back to earn $60 a day, because that's what it takes to keep my daughter fed. So maybe cut me some slack, or at least have the decency to be cruel to my face instead of muttering under your breath like a coward." The barn fell silent except for the shuffling of cows. Samuel's face flushed red, and Sarah immediately regretted her outburst. She'd just yelled at her boss's son. This job, their house, everything could be gone. Samuel started, then stopped. He looked at his boots, then back at her. "I apologize, that was unkind." Sarah blinked, surprised. "Oh, I thank you. My mother," Samuel said quietly, "she worked harder than anyone I knew. Fed us, kept house, helped with harvest, all while sick. Detta tried to make her rest, but she wouldn't, said work was worship, that idle hands made idle thoughts." He picked up the milk can she'd been struggling with, carrying it easily to the cooling room. "I'm not angry at you for being English. I'm angry at," he paused, struggling for words. "I'm angry that Dad smiles now. When you're here, he hasn't smiled much since Mam died." Sarah's anger evaporated. "Samuel, it's not right," he continued, voice thick. "She's been gone 2 years, and suddenly he's smiling at some English woman who can't even milk a cow properly." "He's not smiling at me," Sarah said gently. "He's smiling because he has purpose again. Helping someone. Your mother would understand that, wouldn't she?" Samuel's shoulders slumped. "Yeah, she would. She always helped everyone, even when she had nothing left to give." They stood awkwardly for a moment before Samuel cleared his throat. "We should finish the milking, then I'll show you the proper way to lift. Use your legs, not your back." The rest of the morning passed more smoothly. Samuel was patient now, showing Sarah techniques Jacob had glossed over. By lunch they'd developed a tentative working relationship. "You really yelled at Samuel," Emma whispered at lunch, having heard the story from Katie, who'd heard it from Amos, who'd been eavesdropping. "Where did you hear that?" Sarah hissed back. "Katie told me," she said. Samuel looked like he'd been hit by lightning. Ruth, overhearing, hid a smile. Gut for him. That boy needs someone to stand up to him occasionally. Too used to being the man of the house. Jacob returned during lunch, looking tired. His eyes found Sarah immediately, a question in them. Samuel must have shown something on his face, because Jacob's expression grew concerned. After the meal, Jacob asked Sarah to help him in the equipment shed, alone. "Samuel told me what happened," he said without preamble. Sarah's stomach dropped. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have lost my temper. If you want us to leave, why would I want that?" She blinked. "Because I yelled at your son." "Did he deserve it?" "Well, yes, but then why should you leave?" Jacob pulled out a ledger, making notes. "Samuel is a gut boy, but he carries too much weight on his shoulders, thinks he must protect everyone, including me. Sometimes he needs reminding that he's 16, not 40. He's worried about you," Sarah said carefully. "About you?" Smiling more, Jacob's hand stilled on the ledger. "Ah, I told him you're not smiling at me. You're smiling because—" Sarah. Jacob looked up, and something in his eyes made her words die. "I am smiling at you. Samuel is not wrong about that." The shed suddenly felt very small. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. "Jacob, I know it's inappropriate. You work for me. You're English. He gestured helplessly. "Everything I shouldn't notice, but I do notice. Your strength, your determination, the way you humble yourself for your daughter, the way Emma brings joy to Katie." Sarah sank onto a wooden crate, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "Say nothing. I expect nothing. You need work, I provide it. You need shelter, I provide it. That doesn't change." He returned to his ledger, but his hands trembled slightly. "But I wanted you to know that Samuel sees truly. I am happier since you came. Make of that what you will." The confession hung between them like a living thing. Sarah thought of her husband, of the life she'd lost, of the chasm between their worlds. "I can't," she whispered. "Even if I can't, it wouldn't be fair to anyone." "I know," Jacob said simply, "but denying truth serves no one. Better to acknowledge and then choose wisely." They returned to work, but the atmosphere had shifted. Sarah was hyper-aware of Jacob's presence, of the careful distance he maintained, of the way his eyes lingered when he thought she wasn't looking. That evening, Ruth appeared at Sarah's door with fabric and sewing supplies. "You'll need warmer clothes for winter," she said briskly, "and Emma is outgrowing everything. Come, I'll teach you." As they worked by lamplight, Emma and Katie playing quietly in the corner, Ruth spoke casually. "My brother is a gut man." Sarah's needle slipped, pricking her finger. "Yes, he is. But complicated. The community watches him, waits for him to remarry. It's expected, you see. A man needs a wife, children need a mother. Samuel seems to manage. Samuel is a boy pretending to be a man. He needs to be a boy again." Ruth's fingers never paused in their sewing. Jacob grieved properly for Mary. Now he must choose, remain in the past, or step into the future. "Why are you telling me this?" Ruth looked up, her eyes kind but direct. "Because you are part of this now, whether you meant to be or not. Your presence changes things. Ignoring that helps no one. I'm not Amish. I could never be Amish." "No?" Ruth returned to her sewing. "Yet here you sit, by lamplight, learning to sew, while your daughter plays with mine. You wake before dawn to work our land. You eat at our table. You may not be Amish, but you're no longer fully English either." The words echoed Sarah's own thoughts from weeks ago, balanced between two worlds belonging fully to neither. "What should I do?" Sarah asked desperately. "What you must. What you can live with. What serves your daughter best." Ruth tied off a thread. "But know this. Jacob has not looked at a woman since Mary died. Not one. Until you." Friday morning brought new tension. Sarah couldn't meet Jacob's eyes, and he seemed equally uncomfortable. They worked in silence, the easy companionship of recent weeks, replaced by awkward awareness. Emma, oblivious to the adult undercurrents, chatted happily with Katie about the upcoming apple harvest. The community would gather to pick apples, make cider, and preserve applesauce for winter. "Will we help?" Emma asked eagerly. "If your mother wishes," Jacob said carefully. Sarah nodded. still not trusting her voice. The day dragged on. By afternoon, the tension was unbearable. Sarah was grateful when Jacob sent her to work in the garden with Ruth, needing space to think. But Saturday brought a crisis that pushed personal feelings aside. Sarah arrived to find the farm in chaos. One of the cows was down, clearly in distress. Jacob knelt beside her, his face grim. "Milk fever," he said tersely. "After calving, I've called the English vet." Sarah could see the fear in his eyes. This cow, Bessie, Emma's favorite, was valuable breeding stock. Losing her would be a significant financial blow. "What can I do?" "Pray," Jacob said simply, "and help me keep her comfortable." For the next 2 hours, they worked side by side, following the vet's instructions when he arrived. Sarah held Bessie's head while injections were administered, spoke soothing words when the cow bellowed in pain, helped massage her legs to encourage circulation. Emma and Katie watched from the barn door, both in tears. "Will Bessie die?" Emma whispered. "We're doing everything we can," Sarah told her, wishing she could promise more. The vet, a young man who clearly respected Jacob, worked efficiently. "Touch and go," he said finally. "Next few hours will tell. Keep her warm, keep trying to get her up every hour. Call me if she worsens." After he left, Jacob slumped against the stall wall. "I should have seen the signs sooner. Been watching closer." "You can't blame yourself," Sarah said. "These things happen. A gut farmer watches his animals, knows them." His voice was heavy with self-recrimination. "I've been distracted." Sarah knew who had distracted him. Guilt washed over her. "I'm sorry." "No." Jacob's voice was firm. "No apologies. What happens, happens. But Bessie needs focus now." They maintained a vigil through the day. Every hour, they tried to get Bessie up. Sarah's muscles screamed from the effort, but she didn't complain. This was Jacob's livelihood at stake. By evening, Bessie showed small signs of improvement. She accepted water. Her eyes seemed brighter. When they finally got her standing for a few moments, Emma and Katie cheered from their watching post. "Gut," Jacob breathed. "Gut. She's fighting." As night fell, Jacob insisted Sarah go home. "I'll stay with her. You need rest. You need rest too. When did you last sleep?" "I'll sleep when she's safe." Sarah made a decision. "Then I'll bring supper. For both of us. Someone needs to make sure you eat." She returned with a pot of soup Ruth had helped her make, and fresh bread. They ate in the barn, taking turns checking on Bessie. The cow was definitely improving, even attempting to eat some hay. "Thank you," Jacob said quietly, "for staying, for helping. This wasn't your responsibility." "Yes, it was," Sarah replied. "This farm feeds my daughter. That makes it my responsibility too." They sat in comfortable silence, the crisis having swept away the morning's awkwardness. Sarah found herself studying Jacob's profile in the lantern light. The strong jaw, the calloused hands, the way he gentled when speaking to the animals. "Tell me about Mary," she said suddenly. Jacob looked surprised. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. What was she like? How did you meet?" A soft smile crossed his face. "She was light, always laughing. We met at a singing when we were 17. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was kind, gut with animals, better with people. She could make anyone smile, even my father, who was not given to smiling." "You loved her very much?" "Ja, very much. She gave me 4 beautiful children, made our house a home. When she got sick," his voice roughened, "she worried more about us than herself. Made me promise to keep living, keep working, keep the family together. You've kept your promise." "Have I?" Jacob looked at her. "Sometimes I think I've been sleeping while awake, going through motions but not really living, until—" "Don't," Sarah said softly. "Please don't." "Why?" "Because I'm scared. Because I don't belong here. Because Emma needs stability, not more upheaval. Because you deserve someone who can fully enter your world, not hover at its edges." What if I don't want someone who fits perfectly? Jacob asked. What if I want someone who challenges me, who makes me think, who reminds me there's a world beyond these fields? Your community would never accept it. Perhaps. Perhaps not. But that's not what I asked. Sarah met his eyes, seeing the loneliness there that matched her own. I can't be Mary. I don't want you to be Mary. I want you to be Sarah. The barn door burst open before Sarah could respond. Samuel stood there, breathless. Dad, Thomas Byler's barn is on fire. They need every hand. Jacob was on his feet instantly. Watch Bessie, he told Sarah. Keep her calm. I'll be back when I can. He and Samuel ran into the night, leaving Sarah alone with her churning thoughts and a recovering cow. She could see the glow of fire in the distance, hear the shouts of men organizing a bucket brigade. Emma appeared with Katie and Ruth. Is Mr. Jacob okay? Emma asked fearfully. He's helping a neighbor, Sarah explained. There's a fire. We should pray, Katie said solemnly. For the Bylers and for everyone helping. Ruth nodded approvingly. Gut girl, come, we'll pray together. They formed a small circle in the barn, heads bowed. Ruth led them in prayer, for safety, for strength, for the community pulling together. Sarah found herself genuinely praying for the first time since David's death. The men returned hours later, exhausted and covered in soot. The barn was lost, but no one was hurt, and they'd saved most of the animals. The community will rebuild, Jacob told them. Barn raising in 2 weeks. Everyone will help. It was nearly dawn by then. Bessie was clearly on the mend, eating normally and moving around her stall. The crisis had passed. As Sarah prepared to take Emma home, Jacob caught her arm gently. What we discussed, I'll not mention it again if that's your wish. Your job, your home, nothing changes regardless. But think about it, please. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. As she and Emma walked to their little house, the sun painting the sky pink and gold, Emma said quietly, Mr. Jacob likes you. What makes you say that? The way he looks at you, like Daddy used to look at you. Emma squeezed her hand. Is that okay? Sarah thought about lying, about deflecting. But Emma deserved honesty. I don't know, baby. It's complicated, because we're English and they're Amish. That's part of it. Emma was quiet for a moment. Katie says love is love. God doesn't care about the outside stuff. From the mouths of babes, Sarah thought. But life was never that simple. Or was it? As they reached their door, Sarah looked back at the farm. Jacob stood by the barn, watching them. Even from this distance, she could feel the weight of his gaze, the question in it. She raised her hand in a small wave. He returned it. Emma tugged her inside, already chattering about helping with breakfast. But Sarah's mind remained on that solitary figure by the barn, and the impossible possibility he represented. The apple harvest arrived with crisp October air and skies so blue they hurt to look at. Sarah woke before her alarm, nerves dancing in her stomach. Today, the entire Amish community would descend on the Yoder farm to pick apples, make cider, and prepare for winter. Do I look okay? Emma asked anxiously, smoothing her plain dress. Ruth had sewn it for her, not quite Amish but simpler than her usual clothes. You look perfect, Sarah assured her, though she felt equally uncertain about her own appearance. She'd chosen her most modest clothing, but still felt conspicuously English. They walked to the main farm as the sun painted the horizon gold. Already buggies were arriving, families pouring out with baskets and bladders. Children ran between the wheels while women organized food tables and men discussed the plan for the day. Sarah felt every eye upon them. Some gazes were curious, others suspicious, a few openly disapproving. She lifted her chin and kept walking. Sarah, Ruth called out, waving them over. Gut, you're here. You'll work with me and the women on the applesauce. Emma can join the children picking lower branches. Emma ran off with Katie, immediately absorbed into the group of children. Sarah envied her easy acceptance. "They're staring," Sarah murmured to Ruth. "Let them, you're here to work, not to win a popularity contest." Ruth handed her an apron. "Besides, half of them are just curious about the English woman who tamed Jacob Yoder." "I haven't tamed anyone," Sarah protested. Ruth's eyes twinkled. "No? Then why has he changed his shirt 3 times this morning?" Before Sarah could respond, a stern-faced older woman approached. Everything about her radiated disapproval, from her rigid posture to her pursed lips. "Ruth," the woman said coolly, her eyes fixed on Sarah, "I see the rumors are true. Martha, this is Sarah Mitchell. She's been helping with the farm work. Sarah, this is Martha Lapp, our bishop's wife." Sarah extended her hand, but Martha merely looked at it. "You're the English woman living in the Miller house?" "Yes, ma'am. And working for Jacob?" It wasn't a question. "Yes." Martha's eyes narrowed. "Interesting. A widowed man, a desperate woman. Very convenient." Heat flooded Sarah's face. "I beg your pardon, Martha," Ruth warned, but Martha continued, her voice carrying, "We must protect our own, Ruth, especially from those who might take advantage of grief and loneliness." "The only thing I'm taking advantage of is honest work for honest pay," Sarah said, fighting to keep her voice level. "Is that so? Then why does Jacob look at you like Martha Lapp?" A commanding voice cut through the confrontation. An elderly woman approached, moving with surprising speed despite her age. "Have you forgotten the words of Christ? Judge not, lest ye be judged." Martha flushed. "Annie, I'm simply concerned." "You're simply gossiping," Annie interrupted. She turned to Sarah with kind eyes. "I'm Annie Yoder, Jacob's grandmother. Don't mind Martha. She appointed herself guardian everyone's virtue years ago. I'm only trying to protect. Go protect the apple pies from burning," Annie said firmly. "That would be more useful." Martha huffed, but retreated. Annie watched her go with satisfaction. "Thank you," Sarah said quietly. "Ach, Martha means well, but she forgets we were all outsiders once. Even the Amish were strangers in a strange land." Annie studied Sarah shrewdly. "You're the one who saved Bessie. Jacob saved her. I just helped." "That's not how he tells it." Annie patted Sarah's arm. "Come, let me show you how to make proper applesauce. And don't worry about the starers. Give them a few hours, and they'll find something else to whisper about." The morning passed in a blur of peeling, coring, and cooking. Sarah's hands cramped from the repetitive motion, but she found the work soothing. The women around her chatted in a mixture of English and Pennsylvania Dutch, gradually including her in their conversations. She learned that Annie had been widowed young and raised 6 children alone before remarrying. That Ruth had turned down 3 marriage proposals to care for her brother and his children. That even Martha Lapp had a story. A daughter who'd left the faith and broken her heart. "We all carry pain," Annie said quietly, stirring a massive pot of applesauce. "The trick is not letting it curdle into bitterness." Through the kitchen window, Sarah could see the men working in the orchard. Jacob moved among them, directing the harvest with quiet authority. Several times she caught him glancing toward the house. "He's different, you know," Annie said, following her gaze. "Since you came, Mrs. Yoder." "Annie. And I'm not criticizing. My grandson spent 2 years as a ghost. Now he's alive again. That's gut, whatever the cause. We're from different worlds. So were my parents. My mother was Mennonite. My father Old Order Amish. Everyone said it wouldn't work." Annie smiled. They were married 53 years. During the lunch break, families gathered on blankets spread across the grass. Sarah felt awkward until Emma bounced over, dragging Katie and a group of children. "Mummy, we picked 60 baskets, and Samuel let me climb the ladder. And I only dropped a few apples, and Katie's cousin Ben put a worm in Susie's hair, and breathe." Sarah laughed, echoing Jacob's frequent reminder to Katie. The children collapsed around her, chattering excitedly. Other parents began to relax, seeing their children's easy acceptance of the English woman and her daughter. Jacob appeared with Samuel, carrying plates of food. "May we?" He gestured to the space beside them. Sarah nodded, hyper-aware of the eyes watching them. Jacob seemed unconcerned, settling on the blanket with easy grace. "Dad, Emma picked more apples than Thomas," Katie announced proudly. "Did not," protested a boy who must be Thomas. "She had help." "Did too. Tell them, Samuel." Samuel, caught between the warring children, held up his hands. "Emma picked many apples. Thomas also picked many apples. Both gut workers." "Diplomatic," Sarah murmured. "He's learning," Jacob replied quietly. "Speaking of which, he owes you an apology." "He already apologized." "Not properly." Jacob raised his voice slightly. "Samuel," the teenager flushed, but met Sarah's eyes. "I was wrong to speak ill of you. You work hard and—" He glanced at Emma, his expression softening. "You're raising a gut girl. I'm sorry for my harsh words." "Thank you, Samuel. That means a lot." The boy nodded, looking relieved. The meal continued with easier conversation, the children providing a buffer against awkwardness. After lunch, the men returned to picking while the women processed the morning's harvest. Sarah found herself beside Martha Lapp at the washing station. "My Annie likes you," Martha said abruptly. Sarah blinked at the non-sequitur. "She's very kind. She sees things others miss. Always has." Martha scrubbed an apple vigorously. "I spoke harshly earlier. You were protecting your community." "I understand." Martha glanced at her. "Do you? Do you understand what you're doing to that man, to his children?" "I'm working for him. Nothing more. Don't lie to me, girl. I have eyes." Martha's voice was stern but not unkind. "Jacob Yoder is a gut man, one of our best. If you toy with him, I would never." Sarah interrupted. "Whatever you think of me, please believe that. Jacob has shown me nothing but kindness. I would never intentionally hurt him or his family." Martha studied her for a long moment. "Intentionally. That's the key word, isn't it? The heart doesn't always ask permission." Before Sarah could respond, a commotion arose from the orchard. Men were shouting. Someone screamed. Sarah's blood ran cold as she recognized Emma's voice among the cries. She ran, her heart pounding, pushing through the crowd gathering beneath one of the apple trees. Emma sat on the ground, cradling her arm, tears streaming down her face. Jacob knelt her, his face grave. "Mummy," Emma sobbed. "It hurts." She fell from the ladder, someone explained, reached too far for an apple. Sarah dropped to her knees, examining Emma's arm. It was already swelling, bent at an unnatural angle. "It's broken," Jacob said quietly. "She needs the hospital." "I'll call." Sarah reached for her phone, then remembered. The Amish didn't use phones, and hers had been disconnected months ago. "I'll drive you," a voice said. Sarah looked up to see an English neighbor who'd come to buy apples. "My truck's right here. I'm coming with you," Jacob said firmly. "Jacob," Martha Lapp protested. "It's not appropriate. The child is hurt because she was working on my farm." Jacob cut her off. "I'm responsible." The ride to the hospital passed in a blur. Emma clung to Sarah with her good hand while Jacob spoke quietly to her, distracting her from the pain with stories about brave little girls and magic apples. At the emergency room, the extent of the problem became clear. X-rays confirmed a severe break requiring surgery. The doctor explained procedures, risks, recovery time. Then the administrator arrived with forms. "Insurance?" she asked briskly. Sarah's stomach dropped. I don't have any. I lost it when I lost my job, but I can make payments. I can." "Ma'am, without insurance, we'll need a deposit of at least $5,000 before we can schedule surgery." 5,000 might as well have been 5 million. Sarah felt the room spin. Emma needed surgery, and she had nothing. Less than nothing. "I'll pay," Jacob said quietly. "Jacob, no," Sarah protested. "I can't let you. You can and you will." His voice was firm. "She was hurt on my property under my watch. This is my responsibility." "Sir, are you the father?" the administrator asked. "No. I'm—" Jacob paused, I'm family. The administrator looked skeptical, but took Jacob's information. Within an hour, Emma was prepped for surgery, the break too severe to wait. I'll pay you back, Sarah said as they sat in the waiting room. Every penny. It might take years, but Sarah. Jacob turned to her, his eyes intense. Stop. This is not about money. $5,000 is nothing compared to a child's well-being. Emma is, he paused, choosing his words carefully. She brings joy to my Katie. She makes you smile. She is important to my family. That makes her important to me. Sarah broke down then, the stress and fear and gratitude overwhelming her. Jacob hesitated, then put his arm around her, pulling her against his shoulder. She'll be all right, he murmured. Children are strong, and Emma is special strong. They sat like that, Sarah crying into his shirt, while Jacob held her until the surgeon came to report that the surgery had gone well. Emma would need a cast for 6 weeks and physical therapy after, but she would heal completely. Can I see her? Sarah asked. She's still groggy, but yes, room 24. Sarah started to pull away from Jacob, then stopped. Come with me, please. She'll want to see you too. He nodded, and they walked to Emma's room together. She looked so small in the hospital bed, her arm in a bright pink cast. Mummy, she said drowsily. Mr. Jacob? We're here, baby. Sarah smoothed her hair. Did I ruin the harvest? Emma asked worriedly. No, little one, Jacob said gently. The apples will wait. You rest now. Will you tell me a story about the magic apples? Jacob glanced at Sarah, who nodded. He pulled a chair close to the bed and began spinning a tale about a brave girl who climbed the tallest apple tree to pick the golden apple that would heal her mother's broken heart. By the time he finished, Emma was asleep. Sarah and Jacob sat in silence, watching her breathe. Thank you, Sarah whispered, for everything, for the job, the house, the hospital bills. I don't know how to you'd. It was hard to ignore when she could feel the weight of every gaze. Harder still, when the minister began speaking in English, his words clearly directed at her. We must guard against outside influences that would corrupt our plain ways, he intoned. The English world offers temptations dressed as opportunities. We must not be deceived. Sarah kept her eyes down, her cheeks burning. Beside her, Ruth shifted uncomfortably. But then the minister continued, yet we must also remember Christ's words, I was a stranger, and ye took me in. The challenge is discerning when to open our doors and when to bar them. The rest of the service blurred together. Sarah focused on Emma, on helping her stand and sit with her injury, on being invisible. After the service, families gathered for a shared meal. Sarah tried to help serve, but the women worked around her like she wasn't there. Only Ruth and Annie acknowledged her presence. That was cruel, Annie muttered, watching the other women pointedly exclude Sarah. This is not our way. It's all right, Sarah said quietly. I expected it. Expecting cruelty doesn't make it right. Emma had no such problem. She sat with the children, Katie helping her eat, while the others peppered her with questions about her caste and the English hospital. Jacob found Sarah standing alone by the dessert table. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have insisted. No. Sarah straightened her shoulders. I'm glad I came. Emma needed to see that faith isn't just words. Even if I'm not welcome, she saw people gathered in worship. That matters. You are welcome, Jacob said firmly. By me, by my family. Your family isn't your whole community. No, but it's a start. Martha Lapp approached, her husband the bishop beside her. Sarah braced herself. Mrs. Mitchell, the bishop said formally, I understand you're staying with the Yoder family. Temporarily, until my daughter heals. And then, Sarah met his eyes steadily. Then we return to our own home on the Yoder property, where I'll continue working to support my daughter. And your intentions toward brother Jacob. The directness caught her off guard. My intentions are to work hard and raise my daughter well. That wasn't what I asked. Sarah glanced at Jacob, who stood rigid beside her. I respect Jacob as my employer and as a friend who has shown us great kindness. The bishop studied her. You dressed plain for church, out of respect, not pretense. Yet you can't truly respect what you don't understand. Then help me understand, Sarah said, surprising herself with her boldness. I'm trying to learn. The bishop and his wife exchanged glances. Martha's expression remained stern, but something flickered in the bishop's eyes. Perhaps, he said finally, time will tell. Jacob, a word. The men stepped away, leaving Sarah with Martha. You're braver than you look, Martha said. Or more foolish. Perhaps both. Martha's expression softened marginally. That child of yours, she's fitting in well. Sarah looked at Emma, laughing with the other children despite her caste. She's adaptable. And you, can you adapt? I'm trying. Trying isn't always enough. Martha paused. But it's better than not trying at all. It wasn't approval, but it wasn't condemnation either. Sarah would take it. The ride home was quiet. Everyone lost in thought. Emma dozed against Sarah's shoulder, while Katie held her good hand protectively. Back at the house, Sarah changed quickly out of the borrowed clothes, relieved to be herself again. But as she helped Ruth prepare supper, she realized something had shifted. The other women's coldness had hurt, but Ruth's steadfast support, Annie's fierce protection, and Jacob's public claim of friendship meant more. That evening, after the children were in bed, Sarah found herself in the kitchen with Ruth, cleaning up by lamplight. Thank you, Sarah said, for the clothes, for standing by me. You stood by Bessie when she was down. Ruth said simply, you stood by Jacob when the barn burned. Standing by you is easy, even if it costs you friendships. Ruth snorted. Anyone who would shun me for showing kindness is no friend worth having. Still, I know this is difficult. Me being here, the feelings between Jacob and... Sarah stopped, unsure how to continue. The feelings between Jacob and you are your business, Ruth said. But I'll say this, my brother has been half alive for 2 years. Now he's whole again. Whatever the cost, that's worth something. The cost could be everything. His standing in the community, his children's acceptance, or, Ruth interrupted, the cost of fear could be missing a second chance at love. Mary wouldn't want him to live in shadows. She'd want him How can you know that? Ruth smiled sadly. Because she told me, near the end, when the pain was bad, she made me promise to help him find joy again. I thought she meant in work or children, but maybe she meant more. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. This woman who'd never met her had somehow given permission for what was growing between her and Jacob. I don't know if I can be what he needs, Sarah whispered. Then find out, Ruth said practically, but not out of duty or gratitude, only if your heart is truly called. Later, Sarah lay beside Emma, listening to her daughter's peaceful breathing. Through the window she could see light in the barn. Jacob, checking on Bessie one last time. Her heart was called. That was the problem. Called to a man, a family, a life she could never fully enter, but also unable to walk away. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Work, community judgment, the complex dance of two worlds trying to meet. But tonight, she was here, under this roof, part of something larger than survival. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but increasingly Sarah wondered if it might be the life she was meant to live. November arrived with bitter winds and the threat of early snow. Sarah had been living in the Yoder house for 3 weeks, finding a rhythm in the gentle chaos of family life. Emma's cast would come off soon, and they both knew their time under this roof was ending. But Friday morning brought a different kind of storm. Sarah woke to urgent voices downstairs, and the sound of a car engine, unusual on the farm. She dressed quickly and found Jacob in the kitchen with a man in a suit. Mrs. Mitchell? The man stood. I'm Robert Henley from Child Protective Services. We've received a complaint. Sarah's blood ran cold. A complaint? About your living situation, your employment, the welfare of your daughter. He glanced around the kitchen, taking in the oil lamps, the wood stove. I need to ask you some questions. She's done nothing wrong, Jacob said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Sir, I'll need to speak with Mrs. Mitchell privately and see the child. She's sleeping. She broke her arm and needs rest. I'll see her before I leave. Mr. Henley turned back to Sarah. Shall we talk outside? Sarah followed him to the porch on unsteady legs. CPS. Someone had called CPS on her. Miss Mitchell? I understand you've been living here for several weeks. Yes, but it's temporary. My daughter broke her arm, and our house doesn't have electricity for heating. Your house? He made notes. You're not residing here permanently. No, we have a rental on the property. We moved here temporary because Emma needed help with her earring. And Mr. Yoder is your employer? Yes. What exactly do you do for him? Sarah explained about the farm work, the daily routine, the wages. Mr. Henley wrote everything down, his expression neutral. And your relationship with Mr. Yoder, is it purely professional? Heat flooded Sarah's cheeks. We're friends. He's been very kind to us. Just friends. Sarah lifted her chin. Is it illegal to have feelings for someone? No, ma'am. But when those feelings involve an employer-employer relationship, when there's a significant cultural divide, when a child is involved, he let the implications hang. Are you suggesting I'm prostituting myself for housing? Sarah's voice shook with anger. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm investigating a complaint that says you're exposing your daughter to an unsafe environment, that you're being taken advantage of by a religious extremist, and that Emma is being denied proper education and medical care. That's ridiculous. Emma's enrolled in the local public school. She's just been home recovering. Jacob paid for her surgery when I couldn't. These people have shown us nothing but kindness. Nevertheless, I need to see Emma and inspect both living situations. Sarah had no choice. She led him inside, where Emma was now awake, Katie beside her. Emma, Sarah kept her voice calm. This is Mr. Henley. He needs to ask you some questions. Emma's eyes went wide with fear. Even at 8, she knew what social workers meant. Are you taking me away? No one's taking you anywhere, Sarah said firmly, shooting Mr. Henley a warning look. The interview was gentle, but thorough. Emma explained about the farm, her friendship with Katie, how Jacob and Ruth helped them. She showed off her cast, now covered in drawings, and chattered about learning to milk cows one-handed. Do you feel safe here? Mr. Henley asked. Safer than our old apartment, Emma said honestly. Here, no one yells through the walls and there's always food. And Katie's my best friend. What about your education? I go to Jefferson Elementary. Well, I will when my cast comes off. Miss Ruth's been helping me keep up with homework. Mr. Henley toured both houses, asked more questions, took more notes. By the time he left, Sarah felt wrung out like a dishcloth. Who would do this? She asked. Jacob, who'd waited on the porch throughout the ordeal. His jaw was tight. Someone who disapproves of our arrangement. Martha Lapp, perhaps, or others. There are those who believe I'm bringing shame on our community. By helping us, by caring for you. He met her eyes. They're not wrong about that part. Before Sarah could respond, Ruth appeared. Samuel heard in town. The complaint came from Howard Mitchell. Sarah's knees buckled. David's father. Your father-in-law. Jacob caught her arm, steadying her. Ex-father-in-law. He blamed me for David's death. Said if I hadn't pushed him to work overtime, he'd never have been on that site. He tried to get custody of Emma then, but the court said no, and now he's trying again, Ruth said grimly. Sarah's mind raced. Howard had money, connections. He'd never accepted her, had opposed the marriage from the start. If he was behind this, I need a lawyer, she said desperately, but I can't afford. We'll help, Jacob said immediately. No, you've done enough, paid enough. I can't keep taking. Sarah, his voice was firm. This threatens Emma. That makes it our concern too. The community won't understand. You're already facing criticism. Then I'll face more. He looked at Ruth. Call the phone shanty. Leave message for Thomas Zimmerman. He's the lawyer who helped with Mary's medical bills. Tell him it's urgent. The next days passed in a blur of anxiety. The lawyer, an elderly Mennonite who understood both worlds, reviewed the complaint and Sarah's situation. It's not strong, he said, but it's not nothing. The lack of electricity, the cultural differences, your poverty, a judge might have concerns. What do I do? Prove stability, show that Emma is thriving. And he hesitated. Define your relationship with Mr. Yoder. The ambiguity gives them ammunition. That evening, Sarah found Jacob in the barn, mending harnesses by lamplight. The familiar sight, his capable hands working leather, the peaceful concentration on his face, made her heart ache. "We need to talk," she said. He set aside the harness. "I know. The lawyer says the undefined nature of our friendship makes things worse. Howard's claiming you're taking advantage of me, that I'm confusing Emma by exposing her to your lifestyle, that what do you want to do?" The simple question stopped her short. "What? Forget Howard, forget the lawyers, forget the community, what do you want?" Sarah sank onto a hay bale. "I want Emma safe. I want her happy. I want her—" She stopped. "Say it." "I can't." "Why?" "Because wanting something doesn't make it possible. Because you're Amish and I'm not. Because even if we tried, it would destroy your standing, confuse the children, create impossible situations." Jacob moved to sit beside her. "Do you know why I helped you that first morning? Because you're kind, because you reminded me of Mary." Sarah's heart sank. Of course, she was just a ghost of his dead wife. "Not in looks," Jacob continued. "In spirit. The determination to do anything for your child. The refusal to give up, even when broken. Mary was like that, fierce in her love. Jacob, but you're not Mary. You're Sarah, English Sarah, who argues with Samuel and makes Ruth laugh and brings light back to Katie's eyes. You're the woman who held Bessie's head for hours and worked until your hands bled and stood up to Martha Lapp in my defense." He turned to face her fully. "I don't want you because you remind me of my dead wife. I want you because you're you. The community will accept or not, but I won't live my life by their fears. Your children love you already. Katie cries at the thought of you leaving. Even Samuel admitted you're good for us. I can't convert. I won't pretend. I'm not asking you to." He took her hands. "There are ways. Mixed marriages happen. Rare, difficult but possible. Is that what you're asking? Marriage? I'm asking you to stop finding excuse, to tell me truly. If everything else could be solved, would you want this? Want us?" Sarah looked at their joined hands, felt the calluses that matched her own now, thought of mornings in the kitchen, evenings by lamplight, Emma's laughter mixing with Katie, thought of this man who'd saved them in every way that mattered. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I want this, want you, want all of it." But he kissed her. Gentle, careful, but certain. When they broke apart, Sarah was trembling. "No buts," he said. "We face whatever comes. Together." The custody threat makes it more important to be clear. You're not some desperate woman trading affection for shelter. You're the woman I choose. The woman I'm courting properly, in sight of God and community. "Courting," Sarah repeated. "Is that what we're doing? If you'll have me, if you can bear the complications." Sarah thought of Howard's threats, the community's judgment, the vast gulf between their worlds. Then she thought of Emma, happy and healing, of Ruth's quiet support and Annie's fierce protection, of this man who'd seen her at her lowest and still found her worthy. "Yes," she said. "Yes to courting. Yes to complications. Yes to whatever comes." Jacob smiled, the full, bright smile she'd only seen when watching the children. "Then we tell the lawyer we're courting with intention. Let Howard Mitchell make what he will of that. The bishop will need to be consulted. There are protocols for mixed marriages, requirements. You'd need to agree to raise any children in the faith." "Any children?" Sarah's eyes widened. Jacob flushed. "I'm thinking ahead, pretty far ahead." "Is that wrong?" "We're not teenagers, Sarah. We both know what we want from life. Family, stability, love that builds rather than burns." Sarah thought of her marriage to David. Young love, passionate but unstable. This was different. Deep, built on struggle and strength rather than simple attraction. "No," she said. It's not wrong, it's actually kind of wonderful. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, imagining a future that seemed both impossible and inevitable. A commotion from the house broke the moment. Katie burst into the barn. "Dad! Sarah, come quick! There's a man, and he's yelling at Aunt Ruth, and Emma's crying." They ran. In the kitchen, they found Howard Mitchell, older, grayer, but still radiating the cold disapproval Sarah remembered. Ruth stood between him and the stairs, where Emma huddled with Samuel. "There you are," Howard sneered at Sarah, "living in sin with these people, corrupting my granddaughter." "Get out," Jacob said, his voice deadly quiet. "I'm not talking to you." Howard didn't even look at him. "Sarah, I'm giving you one chance. Come with me now, bring Emma, and I'll set you up properly. Get you back to civilization." "I am civilized," Sarah said. "More than you, showing up here, making threats." "Threats? I'm offering salvation. Look at yourself, playing prairie woman, pretending these people care about you. You think he loves you? You're just cheap labor and a warm body." Jacob stepped forward, and Sarah caught his arm. "No, this is my fight." She faced Howard. "You never thought I was good enough for David. Too poor, too common, too everything you despised. But he loved me, and we built a life together. A life that got him killed. An accident killed him. Not me, not Emma. An accident." Her voice strengthened. "And ever since, you've tried to punish me for surviving, for moving on, for finding happiness again." "Happiness? With these people? They're a cult, Sarah. They'll turn Emma into some submissive little enough." Sarah's voice cracked like a whip. "Look at my daughter. Really look at her. She knows," Annie said simply, "and she's glad." They stood together, the elderly Amish woman and the English daughter-in-law she'd claimed as her own. "You've done good, Sarah." Annie continued, "This family needed you, not to replace what was lost, but to help them grow beyond loss. It hasn't always been easy. The best things never are." That evening, as Sarah helped prepare supper, Howard Mitchell arrived for his monthly visit. The relationship remained complicated, but had evolved into mutual respect and genuine affection for the grandchildren. All of them. Grandpa Howard. Jonas launched himself at the older man, who caught him with a grunt. "Getting too big for this," Howard said, but his smile was warm. He'd softened over the years, finding in this blended family something his rigid world couldn't provide. "Stay for supper," Sarah offered, as always, "if you'll have me." The table stretched long with family and chosen family. Ruth had officially moved to the small house when Sarah and Jacob claimed the main house, but she joined them for most meals. Jennifer stayed when she could. Even Martha Lapp occasionally appeared, her approval now complete if still grudgingly given. "Tell the dirt story," Jonas demanded. "Which one?" Jacob asked, eyes twinkling. "The egg story. When Mama was a egg stealer." "I was not a stealer," Sarah protested. "I was borrowing with intent to not return," Samuel added dryly. "Tell it right," Emma insisted. So Jacob told the story they all knew by heart. How a desperate woman's worst moment became the first step toward their family. "And then what?" Miriam prompted, though she knew. "And then," Jacob continued, catching Sarah's eye, "God worked his miracle. He turned stealing into giving, desperation into hope, strangers into family, and we all lived happily ever after." Jonas concluded. "No," Sarah corrected gently. "We all lived really ever after, with arguments and mistakes and hard work and forgiveness and love, which is better than a fairy tale. After the children were in bed, a process requiring both parents and often Ruth intervention, Sarah and Jacob sat on the porch where they'd had so many important conversations. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked. "The complications I brought to your life, do you ever regret stealing those eggs?" He countered. "Never." "Then you have your answer." They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies dance over the fields, the same fields where Sarah had worked until her hands bled, where she'd learned to find dignity in hard labor, where their children now played without knowing hunger or fear. "I've been thinking," Jacob said, "about the documentary. Maybe it's time." "Really? We've been blessed. If sharing our story helps others bridge differences, isn't that part of our responsibility?" Sarah considered. Their life wasn't perfect. They still faced challenges, cultural conflicts, moments of doubt, but they'd proven something important, that love could build bridges strong enough to bear the weight of two worlds. "All right," she agreed, "but with conditions. Our terms, our boundaries. Of course, we're still Amish in stubbornness, even if you're English in origin." "I think I'm a little Amish in origin now too," Sarah said. "Amish-hearted, as Martha says." A cry from inside, Jonas with another nightmare. Sarah rose to go, but Jacob caught her hand. "I love you, Sarah Yoder. Egg thief, culture bridger, mother to all our children. I love you too, Jacob Yoder. Mercy giver, tradition keeper, father to our whole flock." Inside, Jonas had already been comforted by Emma, who sat on his bed, telling him a story about brave chickens. Miriam had climbed in too, adding sound effects. Katie appeared with warm milk, Samuel checking from the doorway with brotherly concern. Sarah stood watching them, these children born of different mothers but united in love, caring for each other naturally, creating their own traditions from the blend of two worlds. "Mama," Jonas spotted her. "Emma's telling the chicken hero story." "Is she now?" Sarah joined them on the bed, Jacob following. Soon the whole family was crowded onto Jonas's small bed, adding to the story, laughing at Amos's ridiculous voices, creating one of those perfect moments that made every struggle worthwhile. Later, much later, after the children had finally settled, Sarah stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the fields bathed in moonlight. The same view she'd had that first night in the little house, when everything seemed impossible. Now the impossible had become beautifully real. Not easy, never easy, but real and solid and worth every challenge. A movement caught her eye. By the egg stand where it all began, a figure stood in the shadows. For a moment Sarah's heart jumped. Was someone stealing eggs? Then the figure stepped into the moonlight. A young woman, thin and desperate looking, reaching for the egg box with shaking hands. Sarah watched, remembering. Then she grabbed her shawl and slipped outside. The woman froze when she saw Sarah approaching, eggs clutched to her chest. "I'm sorry," she gasped. "I'm sorry, and my kids are hungry, and Sarah said gently. "I understand. I've been where you are." The woman's face crumpled. "I've never stolen anything before. I'll put them back. You'll take them home and feed your children," Sarah said firmly. "And tomorrow, if you want, you'll come back. We need help with the harvest, $60 a day plus meals." "Why would you?" "Because someone gave me the same chance once. It saved my life." Sarah smiled. "What's your name?" "Lisa. Lisa Chen. I'm Sarah Yoder. And Lisa, everything's going to be all right. Maybe not easy, but all right." Sarah walked back to the house, leaving Lisa with eggs and hope. She felt the circle complete. Grace given, grace received, grace passed on. Inside, Jacob was awake, waiting. "Another egg?" he asked, having watched from the window. "Another chance for miracles," Sarah corrected. "We can't save everyone, Sarah." "No, but we can save this one, like you saved me." Jacob pulled her close. "We saved each other, and started something bigger than either of us imagined. A family that proves differences don't have to divide. That love speaks all languages." Outside, the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Another day on the Yoder farm, where Amish and English traditions wove together like the metals in an old pocket watch. Different, but creating something beautiful. Sarah thought of the woman she'd been, desperate, alone, stealing eggs in the darkness. Now she was wife, mother, daughter, sister, friend, bridge between worlds. Keeper of traditions both old and new, the rooster crowed, announcing the new day. Soon the house would fill with chaos, children arguing over chores, languages mixing, cultures blending in the beautiful mess of family life. But for now, Sarah stood in her husband's arms, watching the sun rise over fields that had become home, grateful for every twist of the journey that had brought her here, from stealing eggs to giving hope, from desperate woman to beloved wife, from stranger to family, from surviving to thrive. The circle was complete, but the story continued, in every meal shared, every tradition honored, every difference bridged with love. And in a small house at the edge of the property, Lisa Chen fed her children scrambled eggs and dared to hope that tomorrow could be different. The cycle of grace rolled on. Sarah stood before a crowded auditorium, her hands steady on the podium. The International Conference on Cultural Integration had invited her to speak about their family's journey. In the audience, she could see Jacob in his plain clothes, their children ranging from young adults to the newest edition, baby Ruth, just 6 months old. 10 years ago, I stole eggs, she began, her voice carrying clearly. I was desperate, alone, convinced I'd failed at everything that mattered. That theft should have been my lowest point. Instead, it became my turning point. She told their story, not the sanitized version, but the real one, with all its messiness and miracles. The audience listened, rapt, as she described building bridges between worlds that seemed incompatible. We didn't erase our differences, she explained. We celebrated them. Our children read both smartphones and scripture, know both PowerPoint and plowing. They're fully themselves, neither limited by one world nor lost between two. A hand raised. What about the challenges? The judgment from both communities? Sarah smiled. Still there. Probably always will be. But we've learned that the opinion that matters most comes from within our own walls. Are we loving each other well? Are we raising good humans? Are we contributing to both our communities? The rest is just noise. After her speech, people crowded around with questions. Through it all, Jacob waited patiently, holding baby Ruth, while the older children fielded their own questions about living in two worlds. Finally, they escaped to the hotel room, a rare luxury. This trip to Philadelphia. The older children were exploring the city while the younger ones stayed with Ruth and Annie. You did good, Jacob said simply, bouncing Ruth. We did good, Sarah corrected. All of us. A knock at the door interrupted them. Emma stood there, now 23, beautiful and confident. Beside her was a young man Sarah recognized, Matthew King, the Mennonite boy, who'd been courting her. Mom, Dad, Emma said, using the title she'd chosen years ago. We have something to tell you. Sarah's heart jumped as she noticed the ring. Simple, traditional, perfect. He asked. I said yes, Emma continued, glowing. But we wanted your blessing. Through tears, Sarah embraced them both. Another bridge being built, another blend of traditions. Do we have it? Matthew asked nervously. Your blessing. I know we're young, but you have it, Jacob, firmly. Emma knows how to build bridges. She learned from the best. Later, as they prepared for sleep in the strange electric-lit room, baby Ruth fussing at the unfamiliar surroundings, Sarah reflected on the journey. No regret, Jacob asked. Their old ritual. Only one, Sarah said. His eyebrows rose. Oh? I should have stolen 24 eggs. Would have saved us time. His laughter filled the room, rich and warm as summer honey. Baby Ruth stopped fussing, soothed by the sound of her parents' joy. Tomorrow they'd return to the farm, to the endless cycle of chores and challenges. Emma would plan a wedding that honored 3 traditions. Lisa Chen, now their farm manager, would have updates on the expansion. The documentary would air, bringing new attention they'd have to manage. But tonight, in this space between worlds, they were simply family. Made not by blood alone but by choice, by work, by the daily decision to see beyond difference to love. Thank you, Sarah whispered, in the darkness. For what? Jacob asked. For seeing me, that morning. For seeing who I could become, not just who I was. Thank you, he replied, for becoming her. And more. Outside, Philadelphia sparkled with electric lights. Inside, the Yoder family slept, dreams weaving together like traditions, creating something entirely new. And somewhere in Lancaster County, at a familiar egg stand, another desperate soul might find not just food, but hope, continuing the endless circle of grace that began with one woman's worst moment, becoming her best chance. The eggs were just the beginning. The love was everything. The bridge they built would last for generations.